In a small observatory perched on the outskirts of a remote village in Central America, an ancient telescope stood, its brass fittings tarnished with time. The villagers often spoke of the peculiar instrument, claiming it had once belonged to an eccentric astronomer who vanished, and how he seemed to have created it overnight. The villagers held reverence and fear of the telescope and stayed away from the relic, thinking it otherworldly. It was whispered that the telescope could see beyond the known universe, into realms where light twisted and madness lurked, that the astronomer who built it was seduced into the chaos. Dr. Jen Voss, an astrophysicist, had heard the tales surrounding the telescope and was drawn to the instrument, intrigued by the tales and the promise of discovering something extraordinary. Dr. Voss made her way to the observatory, making arrangements with the guide to get her there, determined to peer through the ancient lens. The travel was difficult and troublesome at times, but she ventured on, feeling the pull toward something greater and seductive. Her colleagues thought her foolish to travel so far alone, but they knew she had become obsessed with the idea and lure of it. No amount of convincing by her friends or family would turn her back. She knew the dangers of traveling alone, but was undeterred and invigorated by the adventure. Finally, she stood in awe of the massive telescope, amazed it was supposedly built by a single person. As she adjusted the dusty eyepiece, the air around her thickened, charged with an energy that made her skin tingle. She focused the telescope on a known, distant star cluster, its brilliance contrasting against the encroaching darkness of the universe. As she fine-tuned the settings, the image blurred and transformed, revealing something altogether unsettling, a swirling void that seemed to pulse with malevolence. Her heart raced as she strained to comprehend what she was witnessing. Beyond the stars, in the depths of the cosmic abyss, she saw some shadowy forms shifting, grotesque entities that defied description. Entities that writhed, and eyes blinked open in the darkness, glimmering with a predatory intelligence. Was this merely a trick of her mind, or was she peering into the realm that should remain untouched? Suddenly, a voice echoed in her mind, chilling and ancient. "You seek knowledge. Knowledge comes at a price," it said. Dr. Voss stumbled back from the telescope, her breath hitching in her throat. Alone in the observatory, she knew the voice came from what she was viewing. "Who are you?" she whispered, the words trembling on her lips. She received no answer to her question, but received a horrifying response instead. "We are just as eager for a glimpse of you as you are of us." Shaking off her fear, Dr. Voss approached the telescope, driven by a mixture of curiosity and dread. She peered through the lens once more. The darkness was alive, pulsating and aware of her presence. Strange landscapes unfolded, a twisted reality where the laws of physics seemed to unravel. Towers of obsidian reached toward an endless sky, inhabited by grotesque creatures that defied comprehension and swirled around the massive obelisks. "Come closer," the voice beckoned, seductive yet sinister. "Join us in the knowledge of creation." Her mind raced, battling the allure of the unknown. "What do you want?" she demanded, grappling with the grip of fear that clawed at her. "We want your understanding, your consciousness. You can be a vessel, a bridge between our worlds. We offer enlightenment beyond everything you know." The shadows in the telescope writhed, and Dr. Voss felt an almost palpable pull toward them. She struggled to maintain her composure, her scientific mind rebelling against the primal instinct to flee. Yet the hunger for knowledge burned brighter than her fear. She knew she had to understand what lay beyond the fabric of reality, but not as the conduit these malevolent beings seemed to offer. "No," she said finally, her voice steady. "I will not be that vessel." A chorus of disapproval filled her mind, a cacophony of anguish and rage. The creatures recoiled, the shadows retreating, but sinister promises lingered in her mind. The image in the telescope began to twist more violently, color shifting in chaotic patterns, and she staggered backwards. The room darkened. She could feel the weight of the gaze pressing against her, an invasive presence seeking an entry through her. "Leave me," she cried, and she yanked her eyes from the eyepiece. The voice faded to an echo, leaving her breathless and her hands trembling. Her mind raced with the implications of what she had witnessed. She realized that the telescope was not merely a tool for observation, it was a gateway, a lens to horrors that shouldn't be observed. Days turned into restless nights as Dr. Voss grappled with the experience. She stayed away from the telescope, immersed in what she had witnessed. Her dreams were haunted by visions of the chaos, the creatures lurking at the edges of her consciousness, probing her thoughts. Determined to put the nightmare behind her, she returned to the observatory, hoping to disassemble the telescope and banish the darkness it offered. But as she approached the instrument, the air turned oppressive again, laden with malevolence and intrusion. The whisper returned, stronger this time, drowning out her thoughts. "We are one. We see you." Panic! She hesitated but reached for the telescope. It felt alive, the brass fittings pulsing like a heartbeat. In that moment, she understood that the telescope had a will of its own, drawing her back to the cosmic horrors that thrive beyond the stars. With a surge of courage, she reset the telescope, focusing on the swirling void. This time, she would not cower in fear. She would demand answers. "Show me," she shouted, forcing herself to look through the lens again. The void swirled, and the entities loomed closer, their forms sharper, more defined. She felt their presence like a weight on her chest, oppressive and overwhelming. Hidden knowledge coursed through her, knowledge not meant for our world. "What are you?" she demanded, her voice steadier now. "We are the remnants of forgotten worlds, ancient beings cast adrift in the cosmic sea. We seek to reclaim what was lost, to consume knowledge, to exist in your realm as one." The weight of their hunger pressed against her mind, threatening to consume her. She fought against it, knowing that at this moment she stood as the guardian between two worlds. Directing all her thoughts, all her courage, she consciously made the choice that she would not be the bridge that would allow these beings to enter. She would shoulder this burden, no matter the cost. In that instant, the connection shattered, and the images distorted, the entity shrieking in a cacophony of rage. Voss stumbled back from the telescope, the shadows swirling violently before collapsing into themselves. She staggered away, the observatory silent once more. The telescope lay still, its once tarnished surface gleaming with an unsettling clarity. Voss knew she had confronted something that would linger in her mind forever. As she left the observatory, the weight of the experience settled around her like a heavy fog. She would never recover from the experience. The toll of their intrusion slowly corroded her. She became unable to focus on her work. Thoughts of massive entities flooded her thoughts during the day and haunted her dreams at night. Arcane and unintelligible knowledge seemed to permeate her everyday life in ways she just couldn't understand. Over the months that followed, the weight of her sacrifice led into madness. She would ramble endlessly about what she saw until she was eventually committed into a hospital. A once brilliant astrophysicist, now nothing more than a raving schizophrenic, if the diagnosis was to be believed. The universe held secrets, horrors that waited just beyond the veil of perception. The telescope remained, a sentinel of forbidden knowledge, its depths forever whispering the names of the unimaginable. It waited silently for someone that would allow it to enter our world. The monsters that lurked there, beyond our perceptions of time, would continue to wait, knowing that the lure of ancient knowledge would seduce someone and finally merge our two worlds into one terrifying union.